This is the story of a journey taken by two men who grew up in the Brunswick Valley in the 1900s. Their path was made of water, a grand river carrying them from the New South Wales tablelands to the east coast port of Yamba. We now know it as the Clarence River, though traditional landowners named it Mullumbimby. The two men took to their journey in a cedar canoe. Lightweight, yet evidently sturdy, the canoe now lies resting in the Mullumbimby Museum, its body only slightly battered, gently engraved with the imprint of the Clarence River bed.
Tom Bower and Bob Laverty were residents of Mullumbimby, young men in the 1920s, both of whom had family links to the area which stretched back some time. The Laverty family were dairy farmers in the area now known as Laverty's Gap, Wilson's Creek. The family property Pulpit Hill, upon which Tom Bower was raised, lies at the bottom of Wilson's Creek Road, not far from Laverty's Gap. It has been said that Tom was a quiet person with a dry humour, a hard-working man who ran the farm at home. He was also a keen fisherman, and he did enjoy travelling.
Tom and Bob were comrades who had ventured out together on more than one occasion. The better-known story is of their road trip with a third compatriot, Ev Robinson, taken in a 1929 Dodge, which had undergone some special modifications, a trip they took around Australia in 1938. The journey was an epic one, taking them as far as Darwin and across to Broome. Equally as intriguing, however, is the earlier journey taken by Tom and Bob in the mid-1920s down the Clarence River. Fortunately for us, the two men captured their experience on film, leaving behind a series of black and white photographs which perfectly sequence a narrative of their journey. As we have no written record of their travels, we may only speculate on the nature of their trip. Thoughts which will be inspired by the images we still have today.
In the early days, there were cedar getters, gold miners, traders in tallow, wood and wool. Squatters built their empires and settlers moved in around them to make use of the labour market. Perhaps the most influential of these squatters was Edward Ogilvie, a pioneer to the region. He is remembered for the establishment of Ogilvie Estate, upon which he constructed a Moorish castle, a personal monument and testament to the success of the sheep station he had started some years earlier. Ogilvie built the castle in the style of the Spanish architecture he had observed during his travels in Europe.
Edward Ogilvie was 10 years old when he arrived in Australia, having sailed for 13 weeks on the long journey from the Surrey village of Merton to Sydney. He came with his parents William and Mary, and siblings. The family settled in the Hunter region. As a young man, Edward left the family home with his brother William and set out to expand their holdings. They came upon the Clarence region after some months of travel and took for themselves a rather large selection of land, 81,000 hectares. This was enough to allow the family to significantly influence the trading market in this area. Edward married a young woman named Theodosia and established an enormously successful sheep station and was able to create an opulent life for himself and his family. The estate operated as a vehicle for the preservation of European traditions in this new world.
The indigenous inhabitants of the area must have experienced a profound disturbance as they witnessed the fencing and harnessing of the land they had known. Ogilvie's relationship with the Bundjalung was defined by his ability to speak their language. He adopted a young boy named Pundoon who taught him the language of his tribe. In order to keep the peace, Ogilvie allowed local tribes to continue to hunt on his land. The pastoral empire began to decline as family bonds disintegrated. It was eventually purchased by the Meyer Baillieu family and still exists as an estate today.
Pictured here on the stairs of the castle is Tom, beside a woman and two girls. We cannot be sure who the females in the photo are, but we can establish the origin of the two lion heads sitting atop the stairwell banisters. These lions were floated down the river alongside an Italian crystal chandelier during the construction of Ogilvie's vision, and must have appeared quite spectacular as they journeyed to their extravagant new home.
It is possible the two men stayed for at least an afternoon, perhaps an evening at the castle. The estate had long been entertaining guests in the finest manner, and we can imagine the men must have enjoyed their time here.
Tom and Bob were reputedly the first two modern-day non-Indigenous travellers to be carried along the Clarence in a canoe, but they were preceded in this journey by a long line of floating traffic which claimed this river route in the earlier days of white settlement. The Clarence was an integral part of the transport system for all produce which left the sheep and cattle stations along the river and further up into the New England tablelands, bringing the cargo all the way down to the seaports of Yamba and Iluka, where it would be loaded onto ships and often exported to Britain. It is known as the Old Wool Route, making stops at the river ports of Tenterfield, Lawrence and Grafton.
There were many reasons to gather at the banks of the Clarence. The traditional landowners were known collectively as the Bundjalung due to the common thread found in the language spoken in this area. For the Bundjalung, Buryimba offered many gifts: a naturally abundant food source, a transport system, and, importantly, a place of beauty and spiritual significance. The river would experience many personas over time. A shift in perception of the river came as a result of its more utilitarian purpose during the industrious period of white settlement. However, this too would later give way to its use as a leisure site for boating and sightseeing.
How did the idea for this journey come about? Had the men ever been to this part of the world?
We know Tom was a keen fisherman, but had he any experience with rougher waters?
What kinds of equipment did they take with them? What did they eat? Where did they sleep? How long did the journey take?
Did they carry the canoe for any part of it? Were they thrown from the little boat? Were they carried by currents?
We can only wonder upon the details of their journey. Perhaps the two men were glad of the sight of the ocean, glad to return to the benevolent embrace of the Brunswick Valley.
One thing is certain, the river was never far from them, caught in black and white moments to be taken home and shared with others like us.